via Second Advent Radio. We welcome you to the airways. And for those of you who are joining via Facebook, YouTube, welcome to another edition of Marriage Encounter. We are delighted to come your way every week with meaningful insights into how you can build a good marriage, how you can have fun and excitement in your relationship. This weekend is a long holiday weekend, and it's a good time for married couples to get some extra time to do some fun things, to add some spice to your relationship. With me is Pastor Staton Adams. Good day, Pastor Adams.
Pleasant good morning to you there, Dr. Greene. It's a very bright sunshine morning on my side, in my neck of the woods. Yesterday it was raining. Today it is sunshine. And we just want our viewing audience or listening audience to stay tuned with us this morning. Call up somebody. Marriage Encounter is on. We are continuing this very exciting and very important discussion.
Well, we want to begin with a word of prayer. Shall we pray? Almighty Father and our God, we give you thanks for the opportunity you have extended to us to share principles of meaningful relationships. And as we present today, we pray for your guidance. We pray for all of our listeners, and especially for those who are married. Some may be having issues in their relationships. May we be able to provide some insight today that will help to resolve some issue in those troubled marriages. Take full control and have your own way. In Jesus' name, amen. We have been talking about the whole matter of conflict. And we last looked at the idea last week. In fact, we looked at individuals who were having sexual difficulties. And we did indicate, Pastor Adams, that we would continue that discussion today because that was a subject that was a little too big to complete in session.
Right? Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm. You know, and this continues to be a challenge in many relationships where individuals maybe started out their marriage relationship well. You know, they got married, they're into that honeymoon period. There is no issue with frequency, but after a while, as they get into the business of managing their home, of dealing with children, of dealing with maybe health issues, personal issues, dealing with work-related issues, they somehow begin to experience a widening gap, and things begin to go wrong. Now, what we are really talking about this morning, however, as a continued discussion from last week, is the fact that there may be individuals who got married and had difficulties in the area of sex from fear, past trauma, shame, or other emotional factors. And they came to the relationship with these unresolved issues, and they create challenges for the marriage. Pastor Adams.
Yes, so very seriously. And we were also stressing the need to address these issues, particularly for those who are not yet married. You can address these issues prior, because if you're a wounded, hurting, bleeding person, you are going to bleed all over the person in the relationship with you. And that person has nothing to do with your past experience. So the wise thing to do, if you're not yet in it, then fix it before you begin. If you're in it, as we've been saying since we began this conversation, it all starts by accepting the reality that this is a problem and how we can fix it. I said also when we started last week, we said that marriage, sexuality is a part of our personality. It is not the only thing that married people do, but is the very most important thing. It is one of the more important things, because we spoke about the unity, how you become one flesh, and the intimacy that goes on in marriage, and we establish the biblical principle and the relational and emotional aspect of it. So that in your preamble, I heard you did mention, Dr. Greene, that apart from addressing specifically the past experiences like trauma and all of these things here, marriage and family life cycle can affect the sexuality, sexual expression. But I would normally say to people, while we go through the ages and stages of marriage, we have to pay attention to the intimacy part. We cannot neglect that part. We have to do that maintenance so that while we are doing one thing, the other aspect of marriage does not suffer, right? And so it is so crucial. And I did mention and introduce last week the term when you said, when you asked me that you didn't introduce the term, but yeah, you do have sexless marriages because of these issues that we are talking to here this morning. So we are continuing with the difficulties, and I was alluding to the fact last week that past traumatic effect can have a serious consequences on marriage and sexuality. And I was kind of outlining some of the effects. I said there might be about 9 or 10 of them. And if people really have issues in those areas, they will have to get help, definitely. They have to get professional intervention if they really have those issues that I alluded to last week. So if you have past traumatic experiences, there can be a physical impact on the marriage and the sexuality. There can be emotional impact on marriage and the sexuality. You can come to a place where you're either hypo or hyper arousal. There can be flashbacks and triggers. There can be intimacy issues, disassociation. All of these are serious matters, avoidance, communication issues. All of these are very critical matters that must be addressed. You cannot sweep these under the rugs. You cannot even pray these away. There are some of these that I mentioned that will require definite intervention if you're going to fix the problem. And we said that you have to begin by accepting the reality, own the problem. We do have this problem with our intimacy, with our sexuality. Is it because of this and this and this reason? We have to address it. We have to fix it.
Pastor Adams, I want to comment on two things. But let me first go back. I wanted to say, since last week, a bit on the avoidance dimension there. But I want to go back to something you mentioned a little earlier, which I think is so crucial. Now, as people listen to these areas that can create significant challenges in your relationship. Earlier, you said, if you're not yet married and you have these issues, fix it before you get into it. And I want to underscore that. And I want to be practical. I know sometimes when we talk about certain things, it creates flashback, or it creates a certain degree of discomfort or pain for some individuals who have been through some of the traumatic experiences. Yeah. But because this is a program on marriage, and we really want to get the point across, I'm going to use the illustration. If you were raped as a child, you were sexually abused, and you want to get out of that situation, getting married without getting help is not going to solve your challenges, So you realize that you have been brutally abused as a child, or you have been damaged emotionally. It is a good thing to say, let me deal with my personal issues and get to the point of wholeness, because we are emphasizing again, a marriage is a union between two whole persons.
Whole persons, yes.
Not two halves, but two whole persons. If you are not whole, you're not going to be able to give significant contribution to the relationship in areas that really, really matter to the relationship. So I am just emphasizing, re-emphasizing the importance of giving serious attention to the matter of ensuring that if you're not yet married, that is, get the help that is necessary, fix the issues, get the counseling, do the therapy, so that when you get married, you don't have those hangovers that become a nightmare for your relationship. That's
Well, well, while you mentioned that, another critical point came to my mind. We're going to get back directly to this, but some people choose to get married as a means of escape, hoping that when they get into this union, the other person will help to fix their pain, their brokenness of the past. We are saying, no, that is not so. That is not true at all. The person might be able to support you in your experience, in your journey, but that person can't really fix your pain and brokenness of the past. And it is not a fair thing, as we're saying that where you should really come there as a whole person, wholeness. So yes, people can choose to escape the harsh reality of home, whatever trauma they've been going through there, and when any major adverse, we call it, well, the term that we use is adverse childhood circumstances that produced any type of trauma, that triggered any type of trauma, has to be addressed as a single item to make you a whole person as you come into this union, and that's so critical. So we are coming back to our conversation.
Just before we go back there, Pastor Adams, I want to make another point. Well, an illustration, really. If you're married to a doctor, a physician, let me put it that way. If you're married to a physician and you get sick and you go to the hospital, you're aware that your husband or wife physician is not going to be the one who treats you, right? There are some ethical issues there. So getting married to somebody to fix your problems is not going to work. That I just want to point that out.
Yeah. Yes.
So a sick person doesn't want to get married to a doctor because the doctor is going to fix them. No, a physician does not treat his family, his spouse, etc. Somebody else has to do that. And in a marriage relationship, the person can give support, very good support, but they can't be that physician. So we can now go back to this discussion.
Well, it's the same thing in the psychological field. It is not recommended that you come to your family members or friends. You refer the person to another neutral person. Yes.
Because of course we want to keep the relationship as a relationship of equals. When I'm counseling somebody, how do I counsel my wife? That's a challenge. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So we were just saying that these traumatic past difficulties, fear, and why we mentioned fear, past trauma, shame, and other emotional factors. Other emotional factors is big. When we say other emotional factors, we're talking to a number of things there, because as we take them as a single issue, what could be driving the fear? What can cause the fear? And you were alluding to that just now when you said, the childhood experience, and you give an example, let's say example rape. I mean, that's several things could happen. The post-traumatic stress disorder, you're obviously going to have flashbacks and triggers out of that kind of experience. And those things have both a physical and an emotional effect on your whole sexual experience, beginning from arousal to how you value yourself. You can have self-esteem issues, self-esteem problems because of all of this. And so when I teach sexual education, I just don't deal with the physiology alone, the actual physical intimacy. I talk to the psychology of sex that begins from desire. I have put something else to what Masters and Johnson have said. They begin from arousal, but I begin from desire. These experiences can even affect your desire to be sexually intimate or to be emotionally close or connected to anybody at all, right?
And I want to add, because it's important while we talk about the emotional component of the sexual experience, and I'm glad you made the point that it's not just physical, but especially for females. Now, it can affect males as well. You know, we have situations where males are abused as boys, young,
Yes.
and they get messed up emotionally and do not know how to appreciate or handle sex. But I especially want to point out to ladies, you know, because the emotional experience is even more significant for the females, you know, the whole arousal mechanism there. If you are not emotionally satisfied, comfortable, etc., it is going to interfere with your ability to function effectively. And so knowing that you feel good about yourself, that you appreciate who you are, that you are in touch with your sexuality and comfortable with it, is going to lend to the whole matter. And remember, we are talking about the idea of sexual difficulties. Sexual difficulties can come about because you are not emotionally stable, because you feel less than an individual, that you don't feel comfortable with who you are. You may look at yourself, and if you tell yourself that you are not pretty, you're not good looking, you may think that your husband does not appreciate you. And you may even be using sex as a tool to get affirmation and affection from your husband, which is an incorrect approach to the whole concept of why God created sex and how he intends for it to function.
Yeah, because anything that causes you to be in a state of emotional disequilibrium, and that's not what you want, you ought to be in a state of emotional equilibrium. Any of these that we have mentioned here would cause you to be in a state, and sometimes some severe states of emotional disequilibrium, and that in itself is a barrier and can cause so much of difficulties in our sexual desire, sexual arousal, sexual response, in the intimate aspect of our married life. And this is such a crucial area, because as I look at the literature, I'm doing some further work in this particular area dealing with grief and trauma experiences. It is so crucial that we have this kind of conversation that we're having here now, and that folk can come to realization that, look, I am not at fault for this here. Whatever somebody have done to me in the past, who was supposed to take care of me and protect me, and did not act that role, I am not responsible for that. And so a lot of time when I deal with clients and counseling session, you have to assure them that you are not the one who is responsible. You did not bring this on yourself. It is some caregiver, somebody that should have acted the role of taking care of you, of protecting you, have abused you, or of mistreated you in this kind of a way. And therefore, but just as there that we can treat with physical symptoms when we go to the doctor, the same way people can be healed in emotional way and psychological way if we reach out for the help and commit ourselves to the process that can help us through these situations, right?
You know,
So that reality we accept.
It's amazing, Pastor, how individuals, you know, somebody who never had a challenge in that area may not quite understand, well, if a person is affected that way, why don't they just understand that it's not their fault? But when you're in it, it's amazing how your emotional state can influence your ability to reason from a certain perspective.
Yeah.
And we do know that individuals have a tendency to think that they are the ones that caused this to happen. Maybe if I wasn't so pretty, they wouldn't do that to me. Maybe if I dressed differently, they would do that to me. And so
hence the guilt.
The guilt, definitely. And so what we are saying is that it is something that needs to be addressed. You have to deal with it. But I want to introduce something else quickly here, because while we are talking to married couples, we also want married couples to understand how this can impact their relationship outside the bedroom, so to speak. Not that sex is confined to the bedroom, but that how it can interfere with your everyday relationship with your spouse and your children. So
Yes.
for example, you were, and I'm just seeking to be very practical, because sometimes, Pastor, we really don't address issues that are prevalent, and some things get overlooked. So I really want to get to real issues today.
Yeah.
Don't have much time, but we're going to do the best we can. If a lady encountered sexual abuse from her father, if there was incest in that relationship, and she has those scars, she may also have suspicion about how men relate to their own girl children. And so
Yes.
now she gets married, and there is that element of distrust, in her husband. And when they
Yes.
get a young baby girl, she now begins to wonder, will my husband interfere with my daughter as my father interfered with me? And that
Yes.
can create a real challenge between this woman and her husband, because she did not get the help to deal with her emotional issues.
Yes, not just between her and her woman and her husband, but it can cause a problem with herself. The whole issue of parental anxiety could step in, particularly
Exactly.
if the daughter approaches the same age at which the person was molested or abused. There's serious parental anxiety, and that's a mental health issue that can develop right there. You talk about anxiety disorder, you're talking about the specific fear or phobia. So it's not just that alone, but it can affect the person mental health in those ways. Yes. So
And that is precisely what we meant when we spoke to the matter of other emotional factors. These are mental health issues that need to be addressed. And I don't know if I can say this forceful enough, that individuals who have unresolved issues need to get help. They don't just go away because you don't think about it. There is this element of you try to forget it, but it is still interfering with your whole worldview and your perspective. And so if you don't get the help, you're going to be affected.
yeah, you can even develop another way in terms of psychological literature. You can develop a paranoid personality disorder, and that is one of the things where you fear, you trust, and you don't even trust your own husband. In this regard, and you can begin to exhibit paranoid personality disorder behaviors. Even in the context of a relationship, and that can be another problematic situation. And as you rightly said, that is what we are saying when we're talking about other things. It's not just the issue that we deal with, but what are the other symptoms? What are the other factors that go along with all that we are talking to here in this discussion this morning?
So the bottom line is, again, so that we keep context. If you are married and you recognize that your spouse has, that for that matter, you or your spouse have sexual difficulties, do not ignore it. And it is sometimes a challenge, Pastor, for people to admit that there is sexual difficulties, especially if a man, because it interferes with his manhood. So he thinks the man likes to be macho, and he doesn't want to say, I have a sexual dysfunction. And so he tells himself that he's okay, and he tells his wife that he's okay, and he tries to pass the book and the buck and blame, etc. We are saying you don't want to put your relationship under that kind of strain, that relational strain that is not necessary. Just admit that there's an issue, and together discuss how can we get help to improve our relationship, rather than spending time that's in denial, that is going to make your relationship go downhill. Do the wise thing, have that discussion with your spouse and say, honey, listen, in other words, accept the reality. That's the bottom line of what we're saying. Accept the reality.
Yes, and you're right. Again, the literature, research literature, Red Book Magazine, research literature on this very issue, subject have said that 85% of the couples who have had issues, difficulties in marriage, discussed them openly, sought the help that they should have got. 85% have reported to now getting sexual fulfillment. So it is not something that is beyond repair, or that's something that we should be afraid to do. In fact, husband and wife should have very frank, clear discussion about their marital sexuality, what is wrong, what is going right, what is not going right, and bring it to the open, whatever intervention that is necessary, right? Because the literature is showing us that there's improvement when we have these kind of conversations, as you are alluding to, and talk to the matter, accept the reality, talk to it, seek for the help or the intervention that you would need, and see the difference.
Definitely. So friends, again, as we wind down today, because we're just about at the end of our time here, we are saying,
now it's finished.
when you realize that there is an issue, accept the reality. If you see that challenge in your spouse, recognize that you nor your spouse are perfect individual, and you can only begin to give the support by accepting the reality that this is so. And just to go back to what Pastor Adams mentioned there, the research does show that when you accept reality and seek help, chances are overwhelmingly you are going to get the tools that will lead to fulfillment in your sexual activities and exchanges. So,
yeah, and by way of education, I would want to say to, if there's any such person who's listening, I don't know our audience what it is, but you would want to talk to a marriage and family therapist who is not just a marriage and family therapist, but somebody who is also trauma-informed. You may probably want to get the counseling psychologist who is trauma-informed, because we have some specialities in these fields, right? It's not just a general person, but you have to consult somebody who's trauma-informed that they can treat right with your particular situation. So help is available, and just accept the reality and go for the help, because intimacy issues can devastate a person's ability to establish and maintain emotional intimacy, and people have real challenges trusting others, forming close connections. The distrust can influence your ability to engage in fulfilling sexual relationships. So it is worth the while dealing with the matter.
Well, that's all the time we have today. If you have questions, comments, or concerns, marriageencounter@slcadventist.org. That's our email address, marriageencounter@slcadventist.org. Until next week, same time, may God's richest blessings be yours.